Because rivalries matter in college football, and this one runs deep, real deep.
NC State rides on the strength of the pack.
Rolls out into the end zone. It is caught. Casey Washington's got it. Illinois pulled off the upset.
And 8 career kick returns for touchdowns. Make it 9. Marcus Jones.
Michigan defeats Ohio State 42-27.
It appears as though the University of Florida has found its next head football coach.
According to reports, Lincoln Riley is leaving Oklahoma. He will take the head coaching position at USC.
So please join me in welcoming the head coach of your LSU Fighting Tigers, Brian Kelly.
Bennett throws, it's intercepted. Picked off, and this might be a touchdown. Battle. Is it?
Bryce Young.
The headline this afternoon is Jackson State and Deion Sanders flipping the number 2 recruit in the country, Travis Hunter, away from primetime's alma mater, Florida State. How big is this?
Sam Johnson has time. Here comes the pressure. Lets it go. It is caught. Jerry Jenkins. 28-yard strike. Yeah. Coach Hall trying to go out a winner.
Wouldn't it be great if during this crazy year of college football, with all of the upsets, a wild coaching carousel, and other amazing stories, that fans of the sport could live out these moments and some of their own in NCAA football? The series is so beloved as players get the opportunity to live, breathe, and role play as a coach, player, or team and have their own college football experience in the game. The series ended in 2013 due to licensing complications, with the SEC declining to allow EA to use its branding in future installments. That move effectively killed the franchise, as what would an NCAA football game be without the SEC and its programs? This decision was made mostly because of the controversial Ed O'Bannon lawsuit against the NCAA, where the central issue was whether the names, images, and/or likenesses of amateur athletes could be used without compensation for commercial purposes. The reason I say the suit is controversial is because while the verdict is seen as a victory for college athletes, it ended a lot of fun franchises like NCAA football and NCAA basketball, which were so popular and enjoyable. This video comes with some optimism, as EA has announced NCAA football will be returning sometime in the near future due to the adoption of new NIL legislation backed by the NCAA Board of Governors. With a new franchise on the horizon, I decided to dive back into the series I love so much and analyze what works, what doesn't, and propose my ideas for what a new and modern NCAA football video game should look like. Here is how I would make NCAA football good again.
NCAA football 2006.
Just like 2K, NCAA football seemed to be innovative and cutting edge at the beginning, but then tapered off and became stagnant and repetitive. By far my favorite game in the series of the PS2 era was NCAA Football 06. Everything about this game was so much fun as a kid, and still fun as an adult. The gameplay was exciting with bone-crushing hits, long broken runs, big plays. I still think it holds up by today's standards. In fact, I think it has some of the best gameplay in the entire series. The presentation is also amazing. The crowd gets up and cheers on a big play and gets loud in key situations. They'll even chant to go for it on a 4th and inches.
And he's going to come up short of the first down.
They boo when things go bad.
He's in for the touchdown. Looked like the quarterback was rattled by that pressure.
Well, let me me tell you, the best ones will sit there and take it.
The crowd in this game is probably the best in any football game to date. What's more is that the in-game attendance will adjust for the hype of the game you're playing a lot more realistically than in the newer games, as stadiums will be nearly completely empty if it's two bottom-tier programs, but filled to capacity if two powerhouses. They even have fans in the crowd who do silly things. The AI will even show off on a breakaway run. Between the fast-paced gameplay and the incredible presentation and sound design, the experience is like none other. The game also featured a Dynasty mode that lets you take control of a program as a head coach, and while it's not as intricate as later editions, it's still enough to give you a sense of role-playing and immersion. With Desmond Howard's iconic pose on the cover, the game was the first to feature a career mode called Race for the Heisman. You start off by picking a position, then competing in a drill that suits whichever position you select. Based on your performance, you are offered a scholarship to a school and then spend the next 3 or 4 years trying to win the Heisman Trophy. This mode is so much more intricate than even the most recent editions of the game, as you live in a college dorm that improves with each passing year, and you even upgrade your girlfriend based on your performance. NCAA Football 06 marked a time when EA actually cared about putting out a great game, rather than putting out a game that will make the most money possible. From a mechanical perspective, the gameplay is probably the best in terms of parlaying difficulty into challenge. In other words, playing the game on Heisman with a bad team against a good team is really hard, and you're not likely going to get a win. Compare this to more recent games where it seems you can overcome the talent gap pretty easily even on Heisman. The impact player mechanic also leads to these unpredictable yet realistic moments where a big-time player would make an unbelievable play like breaking a sure tackle and busting a huge run. It's also one of the few games where wide receivers are able to make plays on the ball in man-to-man. The later games don't have the same you got mossed moments because it seems like you just throw to an open man and get a completion. Sometimes you will have a chance to make a play on the ball, but it doesn't feel as real. The AI will also act realistically rather than scripted a lot more often than the recent games. For example, the AI will kick it off out of bounds, whereas I don't think in my 9 years, geez, I can't believe I just said that, of playing NCAA 14 has the CPU ever kicked it out of bounds on a kickoff once. The game also featured a ton of FCS teams, including their logos and uniforms, available to schedule without having to create them in Team Builder, something later editions of the game don't have at all, instead replacing those programs with the generic FCS teams based on their geographic location. NCAA 06 represents exactly what fans of college football want, a college football simulation that makes them feel like they are knee-deep in the action, a feeling that the next game absolutely cannot afford to leave out.
For LSU, they rack up their 12th win of the season. And for the Ragin' Cajuns, a heartbreaking loss ends their quest for a perfect season.
My personal favorite aspect of these games is Dynasty mode. Here is where you can live out all of those experiences that were highlighted in the beginning. Coaching carousel, recruiting, and of course winning the national championship. Dynasty is as much a role-playing experience as any of the Fallouts or Elder Scrolls games, and it's important that the next entry in the series commit to that role-playing experience and deliver something that players can get lost in. Let's go in order of how a typical season plays out. First, the coaching carousel. One of my favorite aspects of Dynasty mode is how you can start your career as a no-name offensive coordinator for Akron, one of the worst programs in the game when it was released, and end up winning a national championship as head coach of LSU. You can quickly rise through the ranks by being really good at whatever specialty you have. For me, leading a 1-11 team to a 7-6 record and a bowl win, while having the 29th best offense in the country, earned interest from some pretty good offensive coordinator jobs. Because I love the struggle of coming up, I chose Memphis, a job in the best group of 5 conference, but still taking over for a bad team that went just 2-10 and started the season as the 5th worst team in all of college football. After going 8-5 with a bowl win and having the 20th best offense in the country, the job prospects kept getting better and better. as I was being offered head coaching jobs for the first time in my career. Again, because I love the struggle, I chose the offensive coordinator job at Duke, a program that hadn't had a winning record since 1994. But it was still a better job and my first in a Power 5 conference. After leading that team to a 12-2 record and a Fiesta Bowl victory, all while boasting the 16th best offense in college football, I finally take my first head coaching job at UNLV. Once again, the struggle of taking over a program with only one winning record this century is what I live for when playing these games. 3 years into my head coaching career, after winning more games in that span than the program did in the previous 8 years combined, which included 2 bowl games and a conference championship, I make the jump to head coach of LSU. Now I could stop right here, because this come up from the offensive coordinator of a 1-11 team to head coach at one of the most prestigious programs in the country is what Dynasty is all about. It's all about the fantasy of living out whatever story you want. Whether you want to be a Kirk Ferentz or a Kirby Smart or a Dabo Sweeney, going from a MAC school to national champions in the SEC is what makes Dynasty so much fun to role play as a coach. But still, there are ways the mode can improve. For example, in real life, a head coach gets to pick his assistant coaches and coordinators. So it's only right that we should be able to do so in the game as well. Let us hire our own assistants from the candidate pool and watch them develop into head coaching prospects of their own. And maybe we can even go against them the way Saban's assistants are always going against him. For some reason, NCAA Football 13 was the last game to let you see the roster for the programs that offered you a head coaching job. It makes sense to allow us to view the roster so that we know what kind of team we're taking over. I don't know why this was removed in NCAA Football 14. What would be even better is if we were allowed to see not only the roster, but the recruiting class for that program. That way we would know if the incoming recruits are good or not, and it could influence our decision. These 2 minor changes would be massive in giving us further sense that we are role-playing as a college football head coach, which is all I ask for when it comes to this mode. So after you take control of a team, the first major order of business is recruiting. By far, the best recruiting mechanic out of all the NCAA football games is from NCAA Football 13. The mechanic here is the deepest and most intricate in the entire series by a long shot. Whereas some games just gave a set number of points to allocate, or a percentage of total points, or individual pitches which took a particular but indeterminate amount of time, the mechanic from 13 combined both of these methods and ran them together in perfect harmony. Here you get 10 hours per week to spend on recruiting, 3 hours per week to spend on scouting. You can allocate the time however you want, provided you cannot allocate more than 1 hour to any given recruit in a week. But it's how you can use your time that separates this mechanic from the other games in the series. Recruiting is all based on pitches that coincide with your program's attributes. What adds another layer of interactivity is that each prospect has his own interest level in the respective attributes. For example, your program might have a great campus lifestyle, so you can choose to hammer that point home. However, maybe the prospect doesn't care about campus life, so it will yield small returns. But the mode also lets you attempt to sway their interest and get them to be more interested than they are initially. Some of the attributes can also change year to year, so the more games and championships you win, the better your program tradition will be. The mode also features a promise system where you can promise recruits certain things for a huge boost in their overall interest in your school. And the more promises you deliver on, the better your integrity will be, and you'll be earning even more points when you make promises. I find NCAA Football 13's recruiting mode is the most realistic, as well as the one that gives you the best chance to sign that killer program-changing recruiting class. The only gripe I have with this mode is that sometimes it can take forever to increase the pitches, and apparently some can never change. I get that campus lifestyle is not something that is likely to change based on how well your team performs on the field, but for things like athletic facilities and academic prestige, it seems like they don't increase much at all, if ever. What I don't want to see return is the mechanic from NCAA Football 14. It's okay, but comes across as streamlined and lazy, taking away all of the intrigue from the year before. The only meaningful choice is how many set points you want to allocate to each prospect per week, with the most interesting aspect being on-campus visits, which gives defined goals you must accomplish in order to boost the amount of points the prospect will earn on the visit. This is the only aspect I prefer to the previous year's mode. The reason I don't like the point system is that it's so basic and uninspired. There's no nuance to it. Also, I figured out that it's actually unfair. Through save scumming, I conducted a little experiment to see if the points actually mattered in the off-season when a prospect was down to his final couple of choices. I had 2 prospects left to sign, and so the first go-around, I divided the 15,000 points evenly between them. After simming through to signing day, one of the prospects signed while the other didn't. And for the one that didn't, I finished 3,700 points behind the school he signed with, USC. So, I reloaded my save and allocated 3,700 more points to the prospect that didn't sign with me and simmed to the signing day. This time though, I still finished 3,700 points behind. How could this be? So one final time, I reloaded my save and spent every available point I had to that prospect, almost 15,000. Guess what happened? I finished even worse. 3,710 points behind the team he ended up signing with, Texas. What is the point of having a points-based system if it isn't even going to be fairly implemented? Contrast this with NCAA Football 13, where, as you can see, throwing everything plus the kitchen sink at a guy who is already a soft commit to a different school, but still neck and neck with my program, I can actually get that guy to flip to me because of the recruiting job I did on him for the several weeks leading up to this. It's in this way the recruiting system here is far superior to any other game in the series. There are other aspects of Dynasty that contribute to the overall experience I would like to see more refined in the future. My absolute biggest OCD trigger is when a team doesn't play a full 12-game schedule, both in real life and in this game. It's such an easy fix too, just autofill the schedule with FCS opponents until all the teams play 12 games. Or, if you really want to give us more control, let us customize all the teams' schedules in the offseason. Going off of this, let us have more than one user-controlled team per dynasty. One of the best times I ever had was playing through a dynasty with 2 of my best friends our last year of school, with each of us going through the role-playing experience I've been talking about this whole time. It was so much fun to fight over recruits and play each other on the field with the teams we built, and watch us all go from trash to champs. I understand moving forward that online dynasties likely will replace this, but there should still be the option to have more than one user-controlled team per dynasty to create these fun moments. Another important aspect is player development. Let players develop based on realism. If a player is young and inexperienced, but gets some playing time, they should progress faster in the offseason than a player who doesn't get that experience. This is absolutely broken in-game as it stands, and I've tested it out to show you. In the offseason, my backup quarterback, who barely played at all the season before, gained 7 points to his overall, whereas my starting quarterback that led my team to the national championship only gained 5 points to his overall, and was passed on the depth chart by the backup. Not to mention the starter is a 5th-year senior, while the backup is a true junior. In what world does this make sense? Whatever they decide to do with recruiting, please eliminate the possibility that a big-time recruit will remain unsigned with the team on signing day. How about any recruit for that matter? It makes absolutely no sense that a 4-star recruit would simply say, "You know what, I changed my mind. I think I'll just play P-Knuckle instead." One final thing that I wish would make a comeback would be player discipline. Back in NCAA Football 06, random players would commit rules violations, and you would have to make decisions regarding discipline when handling these situations. If you threw down the hammer, it could mean being without a star player for a significant amount of time. But if you gave them a slap on the wrist, the NCAA would start to take an interest in your program, and you could land yourself in probation. It's these little touches of realism that this series desperately needs in order to be as good as it could be.
Hi, this is Erin Andrews, and I'm going to be doing a series of reports chronicling the life of a student athlete from his senior year in high school all the way to his college graduation. I think you...
Aside from Dynasty, probably the next best mode in these games is Road to Glory. As I said before, the first iteration was called Race for the Heisman from NCAA Football 06. The mode was raw, but still satisfying and fulfilling as it put you in the shoes of a college football player in what's basically the same as my career from 2K. The role-playing was also on full display here, both in terms of your choices on and off the field. I think the best version of Road to Glory would be to combine all of the elements from these iterations and roll them into one. First, let us start off in high school and play our way into a 5-star prospect, even as a two-way player. Our performance will unlock scholarship offers from all of the various programs. Then, let us have our choice to select the program we want by either scholarship or walking on. And if we walk on, then we lose out on the valuable experience to start building our character. Then, keep up with the position battles. It contributes to the role-playing because we get the opportunity to either start off as a freshman phenom or fight our way to the starting lineup from the third string. Then, give us meaningful choices to make during the week. NCAA 10 and 11 both gave us choices to make with how we spend our week, but it was just surface level. The only consequences were that we would miss out on attribute boosts if we picked one activity more than another. There was a possibility that if we never studied, we could potentially become academically ineligible, but I never encountered this problem, as my GPA always stayed at least at a 2.0. There should be more stakes, like we can choose to skip class altogether, which would lead us to possibly getting suspended, or we can choose to go fishing during the bye week and risk getting injured. Just give the choices real consequences so that they matter. All that I ask from Road to Glory is the same thing I ask from my career. Just give us an experience that simulates being a college football player both on and off the field. Just like the role-playing you get from Dynasty, Road to Glory offers the same opportunity, so it should be more than simply playing the games on the field. Maybe tie everything that you do with the experience points you earn to upgrade your character. So not only your on-field performance, but the decisions you make off the field will yield different results too. For example, maybe you get offered the chance to star in a new commercial and earn XP, but you risk injuring yourself and missing playing time. Maybe have a notoriety meter that corresponds with how big of a profile you have in your personal life, and all of this can be tied into experience points. The experience points earned in this mode also seem too easy to come by. Even if playing on Heisman, it is way too easy to reach a 99 overall, as I usually do so by the end of the second season at the latest. Innovation is also important. Race for the Heisman completely changed when the next generation of consoles came out, and I would say the innovation was pretty substantial. However, NCAA 11's mode was basically identical. NCAA 13 is when the mode changed to what it's like now, and 14 is almost identical to that. This is the biggest problem with sports games, and it's something all too familiar in 2K. The mode needs to continue to evolve year after year, rather than just being a carbon copy of what it was like the year before. The other aspect EA has to get right is the selection of the winner. The Heisman Trophy winner usually is a no-brainer. This year there really wasn't much of a debate that it should have been Bryce Young. Sometimes there are multiple players who are deserving of the award, but usually it's pretty obvious who the Heisman Trophy winner should be. With that said, the award in the game should be given out accordingly to the best player, yet many times some random player will win it after coming out of nowhere. Sometimes too, the voting will be ridiculous. A receiver from Boise State with 2,500 all-purpose yards and 14 touchdowns should not beat by 1,500 votes a quarterback from a 13-0 Auburn team playing for the national championship who threw for 4,000 yards and 44 touchdowns, ran for 700 yards and 20 touchdowns, all while completing 75% of his passes. Furthermore, the quarterback played in the SEC, not the Mountain West. What kind of delusional bullshit is this? This happens often too, and also in Dynasty. Making this as realistic as possible is the key to creating a fun mode that players will want to keep coming back to. So EA has to nail this, otherwise it's going to be immersion breaking.
It's second down now, and they're just a few feet away from that first down marker. Halfback carries, and he will score.
Of course, the central component to all of this is the gameplay. If it isn't fun to play, then the game will suck regardless of all the other stuff. The game has to feel realistic, but also fluid. One of the biggest shortcomings I've noticed is with regard to the line of scrimmage. The blocking AI can be so inept that you have to wonder what the programmers were even thinking. This is best illustrated when running down the field, where you'll see blockers go block someone behind the play or out of the way. Plays where if they just block the nearest defender, it will break a big run, will instead be stopped dead when the blocker does a 180 and blocks someone off to the side. Not only that, but sometimes the blocker will just run up to the defender, but then never try to actually block, which lets the defender run right at the ball carrier for an easy tackle. It's frustrating because sometimes they do block the right guy, which will spring open a run, but the AI should be scripted to do this every time, not just some of the time. When it comes to defending, on Heisman the CPU breaks so many tackles that it's absurd. There are so many broken tackles that it destroys any immersion the player might be feeling, because the simple fact of it is that you do not see this many broken tackles in real college football. It's so frustrating too because you put yourself in the best position to make a tackle, yet the CPU just shrugs out of it like it's nothing. It's in this way that the game can feel so unfair to play, as your skills are minimized and any sense of player agency is taken away from you. What's more frustrating is when you put the defender in a perfect spot to make a tackle, and they refuse to even attempt to do so. There needs to be more balance between your skills on the controls and the outputs in the game. If you are Johnny on the spot, you should be able to make the play, instead of having the CPU bone you just because it's on the highest difficulty. I get that it adds a challenge, and I'd be fine with it if it happened every once in a while, especially with a really good player. But as it stands, it happens way too often, and this is something that needs to be fixed in the new series. The AI in general needs to be refined, as sometimes players will do the absolute dumbest shit during games, like this clip where the defender completely stops his momentum and changes direction, which takes him out of the play and allows the runner to take it to the house. There's no reason at all for the defender to do this, and if he keeps running straight to the ball carrier, he'll make the play and it will be a short gain. But instead, he gives up a touchdown. There was this one time when I got tackled and fumbled, but there were 3 defenders who had the opportunity to pick it up, and instead 2 defenders dove at each other like synchronized swimmers, and another tried to pick it up but failed miserably. How on earth was I able to get this ball back? Who knows? Between the blocking, tackling, and awareness, the AI needs to be polished, as it is easily the most frustrating aspect of the core gameplay, and something Madden has been taken to task for in recent years. The new game also desperately needs to have better, more fair physics. Too often will the ball carrier get tackled by no one because he ran into his own lineman, and somehow that equals getting tackled. Of course, running into a lineman should stop his momentum, but to get full-on tackled makes no sense given the laws of physics. There are also a number of times I'll encounter a weird physics break where someone will magically teleport across the field for seemingly no reason at all. You'll be running along trying to get some yardage, and all of a sudden a defender will catch up to you within a second or less, defying all that we know. For it to happen once is one thing, but for it to happen several times is a problem that needs to be addressed. It's unfair too because you should be able to pick up several more yards than the game allows when this happens. There was this one time where I tackled a receiver after he made a catch, and well, this happened. Can this even be explained at all? How does tackling someone by the shoestrings from behind cause them to get launched forward for about 5 extra yards? It goes against God. Another example of bad physics is when a defensive back somehow manages to backpedal at a full sprint in coverage all the way down the field. It's frustrating because in a zone defense like this, You're waiting for the defensive back to settle into his zone so you can hit the receiver in stride. Yet the game won't let you because the defensive back backpedals at the speed of Usain Bolt. And finally, the unfairness can be seen in these two clips, which were taken from the same game. How is it that the CPU quarterback is able to throw the ball down the field like he's standing tall in the pocket, despite being dragged down to the ground by a defender, yet my quarterback isn't able to do the same? And you can argue that my quarterback started his throwing motion long before the CPU quarterback did, in relation to when the tackle animation started for each of them. This is how the game is unfair, and it sucks all the immersion right out of your experience. One final aspect of the gameplay that needs to be fixed is something I've already spoken on regarding NCAA Football 06. In that game, you could tell very clearly who the best players on the field were at any given time because their vital attributes truly mattered. However, in the recent games, this isn't the case, as the best players get buried among the rest on Heisman, leaving you wondering what the point of having attributes even is. Here are just a few specific examples. In this clip, the wide receiver is running a breakaway down the field, and it's a foot race between him and a linebacker. The linebacker catches up to him and makes the tackle, so in order for this to happen, the linebacker must be just as fast, quick, and agile as the receiver, if not faster, quicker, and more agile. Keep in mind too that the receiver has about 5 yards of separation before the linebacker catches him. Yet when you go look at their attributes, this isn't the case at all. The receiver has 91 speed, 80 agility, and 86 acceleration. Yet the linebacker has 89 speed, 82 agility, and 88 acceleration. In summary, the bigger, slower, but quicker guy catches up to the slimmer, faster, but less quick guy with a 5-yard head start. Is that how it works? Here's a better one. Look at how the defensive lineman blasts right through 2 offensive linemen like they're high school players. He puts on one move for each of them and immediately makes it to the quarterback. This defensive lineman must be incredibly skilled, right? Nope. 71 strength beats a 94 strength and 81 pass block, and a 93 strength and 80 pass block. The weaker guy, by far, runs right through 2 superior linemen like they're glass. To cap it off, I edited my entire offensive line to have 99 strength, pass block, and run block. Then I matched up with a far inferior team with defensive linemen who cannot possibly match the strength of my offensive line. Then I ran pass plays and just stood in the pocket seeing what would happen. For the most part, they held up, but there were still way too many times when the defenders would absolutely beat down my linemen and throw them around like rag dolls. The icing on the cake is when one of the CPU linemen with a 69 overall shrugged off 3 99 overalls like it was nothing. I can understand having this be an occasional thing, but when the talent gap is that pronounced, it should not be happening like this, and not in this absurd of a manner. Overall, the gameplay needs a ton of refinement before the new series can match the level of the earlier games, and I hope EA will take a long look at these problems and fix them when the new game finally does release.
If you can heed their advice, defy the odds, and rise to the challenge, your name will forever be followed by the words Heisman.
It has been almost 9 years since we have gotten a new NCAA football game. With the recent NIL legislation and announcement from EA, a new game is all but surely going to come out within the next couple of years. This series has such a special place in my heart because of how well it places you onto the field and into the role of a college football player or coach. I know I'm not the only one who loves this series, as the community has worked tirelessly to keep the series alive through mods and updates, as well as with the unbelievable fan project that is College Football Revamped. As with all sport games though, it's important that the series not only come back fresh, but stay fresh instead of turning into a yearly retread with updated rosters and graphics. Because this is EA we're talking about, there is always the chance the game will end up being an undercooked, monetized, absolute, unmitigated disaster. There is so much potential to get it right, but also a lot of ways it can come out wrong. My only hope is that this video will serve to catalog the better aspects of the series and suggest ways for the next generation of NCAA football games to be the way I remember them. I know I'm not the only one who hopes this series will return in all its glory, so we can get the NCAA football game we've all been waiting for. Let me know in the comments what you think of the NCAA football series and what you thought of this video. And as always, thanks for watching.